Nobody expects it. Not the bookmakers who have already crowned the favourites, not the analysts sitting beneath bright studio lights, confidently predicting which football giant will lift the trophy. Not the former champions who arrive at the World Cup carrying decades of history, glory, and expectation. And certainly not the teams waiting on the other side of the bracket. Yet somehow, Japan is still alive. As fireworks explode above packed stadiums and millions of viewers across the globe focus their attention on football's traditional superpowers, another story is quietly unfolding beneath the surface. A story that wasn't supposed to happen. A story that grows more dangerous with every passing match. Because while the football world keeps talking about Brazil, France, Argentina, England and Spain, Japan continues doing something remarkable. They keep winning. Not with overwhelming star power, not with individual brilliance that dominates headlines, but with something far more difficult to stop. Belief. And now, as the tournament enters its most unforgiving stage, an uncomfortable question begins spreading through football conversations everywhere. What if Japan can actually do this? What if the nation that spent decades watching others lift the trophy is about to write the greatest underdog story the World Cup has ever seen? At first, the idea sounds ridiculous. World Cups are supposed to be won by giants, by countries whose football histories stretch across generations, by nations that produce superstars as naturally as breathing. The World Cup is football's highest mountain, and most teams never come close to reaching the summit. Japan wasn't supposed to be here, not at this stage, not this close, not with the entire world watching. Yet here they stand, and suddenly, the impossible no longer feels impossible. It feels dangerous. Because the deeper Japan advances into the tournament, the more pressure shifts onto everyone else. Every favourite knows exactly what's at stake. Lose to another giant and it's disappointing. Lose to Japan and it becomes historic. That reality creates tension before a ball is even kicked. The journey began long before the opening whistle of this tournament, years before the packed stadiums, years before the television cameras, years before millions of supporters dared to dream. Across Japan, a generation of players was quietly growing. Some left home as teenagers to test themselves in Europe. Others stayed behind, helping transform domestic football into one of the most organised systems in the world. Together, they carried a common ambition. Not simply to compete, not simply to qualify, but to prove that Japan could belong among football's elite. For years, the world responded with polite admiration. Japan was respected. Japan was disciplined. Japan was dangerous. But champion? That word was always reserved for someone else. Every tournament followed the same script. Hope would rise. Expectations would grow. Eventually, reality would arrive. A stronger opponent. A heartbreaking defeat. Another lesson learned. Another reminder that football's greatest prize remained out of reach. Yet something feels different now. The players move with confidence. The team plays without fear. And perhaps most importantly, they no longer seem impressed by famous opponents. That psychological shift changes everything. Because giants become less intimidating when you stop believing they are giants. The group stage is the first battlefield. The atmosphere is electric. Flags wave from every corner of the stadium. National anthems echo through the night air. Cameras scan nervous faces in the crowd as millions hold their breath. Across the halfway line stands the first obstacle. A team filled with stars. A team expected to win. A team that sees Japan as another step toward its own ambitions. For long stretches, everything unfolds exactly as predicted. The favourite controls possession. The favourite creates chances. The favourite pushes forward. But Japan refuses to break. Every tackle feels personal. Every interception feels significant. Every successful pass increases belief. Then comes the moment. One quick transition. One perfectly timed run. One finish. The net ripples. For a split second, silence. Then chaos. Japanese supporters erupt. Players sprint toward the corner flag. And suddenly, the favourite realises something terrifying. This isn't going according to plan. For the first time in the tournament, doubt appears on the faces of the favourites. The passes become slightly rushed. The movements become less confident. The pressure from the crowd begins to shift. Because pressure is a strange thing at the World Cup. The underdog rarely feels it. The giant always does. Japan senses it immediately. Every minute that passes without conceding adds fuel to their belief. Every successful challenge sends another wave of energy through the stadium. The players who are expected to survive are suddenly controlling the emotional rhythm of the match. And when the final whistle finally arrives, something extraordinary happens. Japan doesn't celebrate like a team that has won the World Cup. They celebrate like a team that has unlocked a door. Because one upset can be luck. 2 upsets become a warning. By the time the knockout rounds arrive, the world is paying attention. The headlines begin to change. The conversations become more serious. Opposing managers spend longer analysing footage. Fans from neutral countries start adopting Japan as their second team. After all, everyone loves a dream, especially when it refuses to die. But dreams become harder to protect with every round. The round of 16 arrives carrying a new challenge. The atmosphere feels heavier now. There are no easy opponents left, no second chances, no opportunities to recover from mistakes. 90 minutes can change everything, or destroy everything. As the players walk out of the tunnel, the noise inside the stadium feels almost physical. Thousands of cameras follow every movement. Millions of viewers wait for the next chapter. And once again, Japan faces a team with more experience, more reputation, and more expectations. Yet something has changed. This time, Japan no longer looks like an outsider. They look like they belong. The match becomes a war of patience. Neither side wants to blink first. Every attack feels dangerous. Every counter-attack feels fatal. The clock keeps moving. The tension keeps growing. Then, deep into the match, when exhaustion begins affecting both teams, a moment arrives. A loose ball, a split-second decision, a player willing to take a risk. The kind of moment that separates ordinary tournaments from unforgettable ones. The shot flies through the air. Time seems to slow. The goalkeeper dives. The crowd rises. Goal! The stadium explodes. Players collapse into each other's arms. Supporters cry. Commentators lose their voices. And Japan is through. The impossible mission continues. Now comes the quarter-final, the stage where dreams usually end. History is filled with underdogs that reached this point before reality finally caught up with them. One heroic run, one memorable story, then defeat. Everyone expects that pattern to repeat, but Japan has stopped listening to expectations. The quarter-final becomes their greatest performance yet. Not because they dominate, not because they overwhelm their opponent, but because they refuse to surrender. Every setback is answered. Every challenge is met. Every dangerous moment is survived. The team begins to resemble something larger than 11 players. They move together, fight together, suffer together. The entire nation seems to be playing alongside them. Back in Japan, streets are empty. Restaurants are packed with supporters watching giant screens. Families gather around televisions. Students stay awake long after midnight. Millions hold their breath at exactly the same moments. An entire country starts believing. And belief can be contagious. When the final whistle confirms another victory, the shockwaves spread across the football world. Japan is in the semi-finals. Only 4 teams remain. 4. Out of dozens that began the journey, 4, the word impossible, suddenly feels less certain. The semi-final arrives carrying an entirely different kind of pressure, because now, nobody is surprised anymore. Nobody underestimates them. Nobody overlooks them. Japan has become the story of the tournament, and that makes them dangerous. Their opponent is a giant, one of football's royalty, a nation whose players have spent their entire careers preparing for moments exactly like this. The stadium is filled with confidence from one side, hope from the other. The match begins exactly as many predicted. The giant attacks relentlessly. Wave after wave, chance after chance. The Japanese defense bends, but it never breaks. Minutes turn into hours. Every clearance feels monumental. Every save feels legendary. And then, when fatigue begins affecting everyone on the field, an unexpected hero emerges. Not the biggest star, not the player featured on magazine covers, just someone willing to rise when history calls. The decisive pass arrives. The decisive run follows. The decisive finish changes everything. Goal. For a moment, nobody can believe what they are seeing. Then the realization spreads through the stadium. Japan is leading. Japan is minutes away. Japan is approaching the World Cup final. The final whistle feels surreal. Players fall to the grass. Some laugh. Some cry. Some simply stare into the distance, because they understand what has happened. The dream that once sounded impossible is now one match away. 1. The final becomes more than a football match. It becomes a collision between possibility and history. Across the world, anticipation reaches extraordinary levels. Millions tune in. Pundits debate endlessly. Fans argue over predictions. And at the centre of it all stands Japan. 90 minutes from immortality. Yet the final obstacle is the largest of all. A true football superpower. A team filled with world-class talent. A team that has spent the entire tournament proving why it deserves the trophy. Everything about the matchup seems unfair. Everything about the challenge seems overwhelming. And yet, if Japan has taught the world anything during this tournament, it is that football is not played on paper. It is played on grass, under pressure, in moments. The final begins. Every touch feels significant. Every pass carries weight. The crowd creates a deafening wall of sound. The tension is almost unbearable. Minutes disappear. Opportunities come and go. Neither side gives an inch. The scoreboard remains uncertain. The trophy remains within reach. The dream remains alive. As the match enters its final stages, exhaustion covers every face. Legs feel heavier. Thoughts move slower. The players are no longer running on energy. They are running on belief. The same belief that carried them through the group stage. The same belief that survived every obstacle. The same belief that transformed outsiders into contenders. Whether the decisive moment arrives through a last-minute goal, a dramatic extra-time winner, or the cruel lottery of penalties hardly matters. Because by now, something larger has happened. Japan has already changed the tournament. They have forced the football world to imagine a different future. They have shown that courage can challenge reputation, that unity can challenge talent, that conviction can challenge history. And as the final moments unfold beneath the brightest lights in world football, millions of people find themselves doing something they never expected. They are believing. Believing that the impossible is not always impossible. Believing that giants can fall. Believing that history can be rewritten. Perhaps Japan lifts the trophy. Perhaps they fall one step short. But that is no longer the most important part of the story. Because some journeys become legendary long before they reach their destination. And somewhere inside a packed stadium, with the crowd roaring, the world watching, and a nation's dream hanging in the balance, Japan stands on the edge of history. Not as spectators, not as outsiders, not as underdogs hoping to survive, but as a team that has dared to imagine the impossible. And sometimes, in football, that is exactly where miracles begin.